Welcome back, guys, to another champion concept video with me. Today we're going to be going over a mage concept that I created. His name is Viile, the Purgatorian creation. If you guys like my champion concepts, want to see more, please subscribe, leave a like on the video. I already said that. And leave a comment, let me know what you guys think of the video, and we'll get right into the champion. So with Viile, I wanted to create a very lane dominant mage champion. Who was a little bit different than what we have in the game right now. What I consider a mage lane controller would be someone like Malzahar or Heimerdinger, actually, to be more specific. And I think Heimerdinger is really boring. I'm sure most of the community would agree with me with that as well. So I wanted to make a champion who kind of pushed the limits of that. So with Viile, actually the idea of what he looks like is very similar, or it's a he, it kind of thing. What this champion looks like is similar to the Nightmare boss from Devil May Cry. If you guys have ever played that game before, if not, you should play it. It's very good. But just kind of this big blobby symbiote looking type of being, which is not what he will look like on the Rift, unfortunately. He would be in a human form, and that kind of gets a little explained more in his passive. But yeah, I think I did a really good job. I pulled a lot of inspiration from other games with some of how his abilities work, so you guys let me know what you guys think. So we'll get into the passive here. Camera shaking for some reason. We'll get into the passive here, and why is my camera shaking? Okay, we're good. For some reason, camera was shaking there. The passive is known as Purgatorian Anomaly. Vile's true form cannot leave the negative energy left in the fountain. Instead, uses a host body to traverse the rift. With its entangling power, Viile can fuse with any one of its team's 3 inhibitors, allowing Viile to manifest at the furthest turret from the fused inhib. Has a 180-second cooldown. So how this ability works, so Vile's true form kind of just lingers in the fountain. I don't know if it would be in the form of like a pillar or just kind of like a blobby symbiote kind of thing, but it kind of takes over the form of this human male host body, and that's how it actually kind of plays through the game. However, Viile is able to fuse with one of its team's 3 inhibs, which will allow it to basically teleport to the furthest turret in that lane. So let's say you're starting the game and you're going top lane. You can fuse with the top inhibitor, and then it can instantly teleport you to that top lane turret, the furthest turret, which would be the tier 1, or you can do it once you come back to base. But you can do that once every 180 seconds. So kind of like a mini TP in a way. This gives Viile some very interesting summoner spell combinations. You don't really need to use TP. Or you could, and be kind of that similar situation as like Shin and Twisted Fate, where they also take TPs sometimes, but you also have a kind of a global where you can get back to lane if you need to. So giving you double pressure in lane. So there's some different options there, just kind of leaving things open. Now, you can only fuse with inhibs that are active. So if your inhib is down or destroyed, you cannot TP, obviously, to anything. There's nothing for you to TP to. Let's say you fuse with top inhib, and then your top inhib gets knocked down within that 180 seconds, you still cannot TP, you still can't, refuse to another inhib, as I put down here. You can reattach after your cooldown has reset. You have to wait till the cooldown resets to actually be able to do any of that stuff. So this is a very, I'd say, unique type of ability, but it definitely gives Viile some very interesting laning, especially early game, with what you can do with having kind of a double TP sort of setup if you wish. The first ability is Plasma Overload. Now this ability is a controlled skill shot, cooldown from 8 to 3, and as you can see here, this is not a error. This has 6 different levels that it can put into, which means that another one of its abilities is actually cut down a little bit, which we'll see. With this ability, Viile launches an acidic plasma from his right hand. I highlighted right, makes it a little bit easier to kind of know which side it's going to be coming from. Kind of how Blitzhook comes from, one side, Diana's Q comes from one side. Towards target location, dealing magic damage to the first target in range. Now there's 2 different effects on this ability. The first one, if this ability last hits an enemy minion or monster, Plasma Overload will spread to all targets nearby, having a splash type of effect, ticking magic damage for 3 seconds. If this ability hits an enemy champion, the enemy champion will apply Plasma Overload and will tick magic damage for 3 seconds. So some Nico effects in there, as you can see. Also just like some Luden's effects, some Luden's Echo kind of in there as well. So Being able to clear minions and clear monsters, being able to basically, kill something, and then it spreads over to other, monsters too, dealing more damage. Just making wave clear and even jungle clearing very, very useful. I don't think Viile could be a jungler, as you'll see with the rest of her kit. It could be. This makes it so like when you are in lane, you are able to clear maybe like Gromp, maybe Krugs, while you're kind of pushing down the lane, just making taking some XP and gold away from the enemy, jungler, or even yours if you're that type of person. And then the second part, having that ability, being able to tick also additional damage for an enemy champion, just gives it some more poke of damage in lane to kind of harass and push them out of lane. The second ability is called Spore Hatching. This has a passive and an active effect with a cooldown of 14 to 8. Cast range is 750, growth radius is 250. So lots of numbers there already, so just bear with me and we'll kind of explain. So passive. Active turrets and spores produce a decaying blight, which covers all the terrain that it touches, which is like a grayish sort of color added to the terrain. Decaying blight reduces movement speed of monsters and enemy minions by 30% while moving. Enemy champions by 10%. Reduced movement speed. Viile is granted 15 to 35 bonus movement speed while moving across blighted terrain, but has 25% down to 15% reduced movement speed if moving across normal terrain, and also gains no bonuses from movement speed items. Okay, lots of stuff there. So the whole point of this ability, you are able to create these spores, which is actually what the active does, and your turrets also will spawn this type of decaying blight terrain. This is kind of a unique organic ability that allows Viile to move quickly across this terrain, and obviously is slower when he is not on this terrain. You can probably look at this and go, oh, I've seen that before. That's from the Zerg from StarCraft. And that's kind of the idea where I got it from. I was very, very inspired by that, and I felt like the Queen character from Heroes of the Storm, I felt like it's just a really cool thing to do. So having monsters and minions slowed by 30%, enemy champions slowed by 10, I could raise that a little bit, maybe to 10-15%, kind of scaling. But Viile gains bonus movement speed from this, has reduced movement speed when not on this terrain, and also gains no bonus movement speed from movement items at all. I also think Ghost would also not work as well. Trying to make sure I'm trying to clear up loopholes that could possibly happen with having a bonus movement speed. The spores themselves, you spawn these by the active. These spores will spread the decaying blight. Blight can move over terrain if applicable, so it can move across walls, over barren wall, over dragon wall or pit. Cannot spawn multiple spores within 200 range of each other. Since the range does have a 250 growth radius, it has to be spawned out of that edge 200 range. Activating spore hatching on top of an active spore will make that current spore explode, dealing AoE magic damage and also reducing the growth radius by that 250%. Basically, you're getting rid of that spore. Now, nowhere in here did I put that these spores can be killed by enemy champions. I'm on the fence about it, and I would like your guys' opinion on that. I don't know if it would be a good idea to be able to kill these, mainly because I think if an enemy champion was able to destroy these spore hatchings, it basically, negates his, a lot of his kit. It negates this, negates another ability, just makes it so that he's completely useless. But then if I think about it, if spores cannot be destroyed, you can just cover the whole map. I think there would be that was my phone, some sort of an expiration on them, maybe a minute. But then you get in this weird thing where you're going to get patching of spores across the map. Having after maybe like 60 seconds, they can be destroyed. Or after like 35 seconds they can start being destroyed, something like that. Just give me some ideas, because I'm trying to think of it. There's a lot of ideas that I had. I just didn't feel like any of them fit within this kit. But yeah, really give me your ideas. But this ability also being able to activate it and basically self-destruct a spore to maybe stop someone from ganking you, from kind of give it a little more kiting. Just being able to deal some damage, maybe have them wave clear a little bit too. Gives him gives him some unique options when throwing this ability down. Third ability actually needs blighted terrain to actually activate. This is called Cephalo Dive. Cooldown of 10 to 5 with a cast range of 800, a second cast range of 500, and an AoE range of 350. First things first, this ability has to be casted on top of blighted terrain. If you're not on blighted terrain, this ability will not work. If you are on blighted terrain though, you cast this. Viile will travel underground for 2 seconds to avoid any abilities. So becomes untargetable, very similar to Fizz's Trickster. The second active, recast to target location, emerging Viile from the terrain below in a form of an animated claw. Basically, his whole body transforms into this giant claw type of thing. Dealing magic damage to all targets caught in range. Claw damage is a cone radius zone. That's where the 350 comes in. This can be used as an engage and disengage tools. Having this ability, you can go over walls to either close the gap to deal damage. You can also use this to increase the gap to get away from damage. Just being able to traverse around the map just gives Viile some interesting ways to kind of be mobile with being a very immobile champion. If you think about it, if you're not on blighted terrain, you have no mobility at all. Think of like unmounted Kled. That's the kind of base movement speed that Viile would have when he's not on terrain or on blighted terrain. With blighted terrain, it's like mounted Kled. You have so many more options and tricks to be able to do. That's why I like this ability. It may not fit in. Some people may not think it fits with his overall kit. I think it's nice though, just to kind of throw a monkey wrench in there, just having a different type of ability for what seems to be a very standalone, I'm going to walk around an immobile type of mage and just deal damage and just push. Very unique ability though. I do like it, and just fits well with the rest of his kit. Now his ult though, his ult changes the game. His ult is completely bonkers in my opinion. But I like it that way. So his ult is called Omni Strand, cooldown of 290 to 180 with a cast range of 850. So this is a target ability. Viile targets an enemy champion, extracting their molecule structure, manifesting itself as one of 3 Omni designed beasts, altering Vile's abilities, appearance, and select stats for 30 seconds. The transformations depend on the target chosen for extraction, and there are 3 different type of beasts that it can turn into. There's a magic base, tank base, and an assassin base. This is where it gets very interesting. So when I say a target ability, it's not a skill shot. Think of like Silas ult. You click on a target, boom, you get their abilities. But now instead of this character just getting some sort of ability, this champion completely changes into a different type of champion with different abilities, different appearance, and some different stats. I had to, from the idea that I originally had, this was a very insane ability. When I get into kind of the 3 different abilities, I had it insanely overpowered, but I dialed it back and I made it so each transformation has 2 abilities and a passive and some stat increases. That's basically it. No, the original one that I did, each transformation had 4 different abilities, and I was like, this is just completely broken, especially for just a 30-second window. You can just spam all your abilities, transform, then spam all your abilities again. It was a little broken, so I made it so it's each kind of transformation has a niche that you're transforming for these 30 seconds, and this could be reduced to 30 seconds. It can go down to 20. I think would even be good as well. We'll get into the first one here, and you guys can be the judge of it. So the first one is the melee based. It's called just a were monster, quote unquote. This is the attack damage transformation. So this requires a strand from an enemy champion who has a high percentage of bonus AD. So AD carries, assassins, some bruisers. This will change Viile into a were monster. It's sort of like a werewolf type of creature, which specializes in single target takedowns, strong burst potential, as well as focusing on building momentum with movement speed. So the passive, the were monster, moves in one direction, consistently gains movement speed from 0 to 25%. I think I was actually going to increase that higher, maybe to like 45%. Movement speed increases the ability 1 damage. So the first ability here, which is called Bite, increases the damage of this ability. This is just a single target ability, does physical damage, has a very low cooldown. Howl, the other ability, enemy champions within 875 range and under 25% HP are slowed for 40%, decaying over 7 seconds. So lots of stuff there. So the reason you would transform into this is to chase down a champion. So let's say you're fighting a Yi or a Jinx. You transform into this champion, that champion runs away, but you see the support running away. You want to chase down that support, or maybe you are chasing down the AD carry. Being able to gain movement speed, but consistently while moving one direction, very similar to how Aurelion Souls, one of his passive worked. Chasing him down, hitting him with the bite, dealing a ton of burst damage very, very quickly, takes him out, then you leave your transformation. So this is more for chase downs, not necessarily for team fighting. You're going to do this to get chase down kills, or even to, transform to run away, because you are gaining a lot of movement speed. You can use this to kite, use this to just continuously gain movement speed and get out of the way, and get to safety. The second ability is the tank-based transformation, which is called Gorilla Beast. It's just code names that I came up with it. This requires strand of an enemy champion who has a high percentage of bonus HP. This is a massive ape-like champion, which has tons of crowd control potential, durable damage absorption, and focuses on knockups and cornering targets so other allies can finish them off. Passive for this ability: every target CC'd by this transformation is granted a small portion of shield based off X percentage of resistances, decaying over 3 seconds. First is called Unleash Strength. This is a target ability, throws a gigantic fist, dealing physical damage and knocking back the first target hit, damaging other targets if target is punched into them. So think Lee ultimate, like Lee Sin ultimate, kind of in this ability. You basically punch a target, you punch them in one direction. You don't get to pick the direction, you just get to punch them whichever direction that they're pointing at right now. Kind of how Akali's E works. It just kind of moves in whatever direction, or like Caitlyn's E just kind of moves in which direction that you are facing and that they are at, kind of that trajectory. The second one is called Seismic Leap, and also Almighty Roar. This is a charge movement ability. Charge is a massive leap. The longer the charge, the longer the leap, dealing physical damage to all targets upon landing. Upon landing, lets out a massive roar, slowing targets for 20%. Fully charged leaps will fear the targets caught directly underneath the landing zone. This has, as you can see, lots of CC potential, being able to jump over walls, sort of like a Zac in a way, and just being able to catch people off guard, throwing, jumping in, knocking somebody back, fearing some targets, just being able to cause a lot of destruction. I think this would be mainly for team fights, just being able to become really tanky for a few seconds, completely changing, having some playmaking ability, just completely changing and altering how a team fight's going to go. And like I said before, 30 seconds for these ultimates could definitely be cut down. I think 10 seconds, I think 15 seconds, I think 20 seconds is good. So 30 seconds was just kind of a placeholder. As I'm looking at these, as I'm talking about them more, I definitely think 30 seconds would be too long. 15 or 20 would be pretty good, maybe a little bit lower than that. So that is the tank champion here. And the last ability is the range. This is based off of the ability Power Transformation, which requires a strand of an enemy champion who has a high percentage of bonus AP. Called the Porcupine Beast, just a spiked covered creature, specializes in long range abilities, high splash damage, and focusing on consistence in basic attacks and increasing its attack speed rate. So the passive: consistent basic attacks increase auto attack speed and decreases movement speed. Basically a Kog'Maw, so to speak. So the more basic attacks that you are landing, the higher your auto attack speed will go up. But as your auto attack speed goes up, your movement speed gets decreased. You become a slowly moving artillery. First ability is called Bruising Needles. The skill shot fires 3 AoE needles in a line formatted directional type of skill shot, dealing magic damage to all targets caught in each one of these 3 zones. The zones would be about 75, 100 radius, say 100, 150. So not really big range. So it's just you gotta really land these on top of the target. The second ability is called Scatter Shot. This is a charged skill shot. Unleashes a bundle of thorns, scattering in direction. First enemy champion hit is knocked back. This is determined by the knockback radius is determined by the charge rate. Think of it as a Varus Q. That's how this ability would work. With this, you could use this for team fights as well. You're going to be using a lot of, you're going to really need this if your team is lacking some sort of backline damage, and you just being able to sit back and just kind of knock some abilities back, just put out a high amount of DPS. Now, obviously, the one question that I'm sure people will ask is, well, what if someone has a high amount of AP and a high amount of AD? Which one does it choose? It chooses whichever is the highest percentage. So if you take a champion like Kayle, take a champion like Akali, Katarina, these are champions who can build AP and AD. Whichever one the ratio is higher is the transformation that they will become. I believe a good indicator, just visually, for Viile would be whenever he's going to use his ultimate, you will see a ring, whether it's a green ring, a blue ring, or a red ring, around the enemy champions to kind of dictate, oh, if I attack this champion, I'm going to get bonus. I'm going to become, the tank base champion, not the AD base champion. Just something that would give the player who's playing, the player who's using Viile, kind of the understanding of which target you should be going after, not having to guess what their ratios are in your head. But yeah, that is Viile. I know there's a lot, and I think this champion would be top lane. Jungle could also be an effect. Definitely as a top or a mid solo laner, basically just later in the game you're just going to be pushing. But having some very unique abilities to potentially team fight well using the ultimate. Weaknesses, if you're able to kill the spores, that would be a big weakness. You're basically removing any form of bonus movement speed, and you're actually removing a damage ability too by not having Blight to walk upon, which could make this champion very, very useless. So there is some counterplay there, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. Very interesting champion concept. I want to know what you guys think, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.